What is up? Welcome back to another episode of Azura Media Club, home of the Bad Girl Coven. I'm your Coven leader, Emily, and we're talking about National Treasure 2, Book O' Secrets. That's what it's called, Book O' Secrets. No, it's Book of Secrets. As in the President's Secret Book. So, National Treasure 2 is a sequel to National Treasure 1, as you might have guessed. Spoilers for both National Treasure 1 and 2, and maybe the TV show, I don't know. So, in honor of National Treasure 2, I'm wearing Daring Do. Anyway, National Treasure 2 is about the Civil War in a little bit more of a sense. You feel like the first one had a lot more to do with the Revolutionary War, but this one has a lot to do with Lincoln and the Civil War, but also about Cibola, the City of Gold, which is what they're looking for the whole time. But basically, it starts off, it's after the Civil War by like 5 days or something. It's the night Lincoln's gonna get assassinated. Spoilers for history, by the way. Lincoln died. Got shot in a theater. Ford Theater. I know historical stuff. See, here's the song. So yeah. So John Wilkes Booth is trying to figure out this cipher or whatever. It's a Playfair cipher. You know, that's what they say in the movie. Anyway, so he goes to Thomas Gates. I think it's Thomas Gates, right? Or whatever. It's what's his face's grandfather. It's like the great grandfather of, you know, our Gates, Bill Gates, Ben Gates. So yeah. Anyway, he's the father of this little kid who's like kind of integral to the movie. And he actually shows up later. He's in the scene. They're in the bar together. This little kid and his dad, which are the Gates people, and the dad's like decoding the cipher or whatever, and the little kid's there, and he sees his dad get shot because there's all this commotion about Lincoln getting shot. You see the scene of John Wilkes Booth going and killing Lincoln. So in a way, you could say this movie is a sequel to that Lincoln movie that didn't show that at the end. So that's a terrible joke. Anyway, so yeah, so he's there decoding the cipher, and he finds out the guy that he's decoding it for is KGB, which is you know, the opposite side of him in the Civil War there, the Confederates. So or KGC. It's a KGB tonight. That's like a different thing. KGC, Knights of the Golden Circle. So this is bad stuff. He doesn't want to be translating this shit for that guy. But the guy holds a gun on him under the table, and he's like, I'd appreciate if you finished that thing. And then he like takes an opportunity when the guy turns around to like throw it in the fire. And the guy fishes it out of the fire, but you know, you think it like would be burned in some capacity, but you see it later, and the edges like exactly line up to the notebook, so it's like, what the fuck? That's not how that would work. Anyway, so he takes Thomas's hand, the grandfather or whatever, and he says when he's dying, he's like, the debt that all men pay, which is death, which is the answer to the Playfair cipher. So this is the story that's being told by Ben Gates and his dad there, Patrick Gates, at this seminar, and so we cut to modern day where they're talking about it or whatever. And then this other guy, Mitch Wilkinson, who's like kind of the villain for the movie, basically like says, well, I got a page that says different. So he's got the burning missing page, and he like shows that it says Thomas Gates on there. Thomas Gates? Yeah, okay, so that would be the dad of the kid. I don't remember the kid's name. Anyway, Thomas Gates, who it says he's a conspirator of the Lincoln assassination. It says like artifacts or something, which could mean a lot of things, but like, they lump him in just after they were telling this like story about how he helped them not find the city of gold, basically. And so his name is Mud. It's just a little thing from later in the movie there. So it's up to Ben Gates and his dad to kind of like prove this whole thing wrong, and he wants to see the diary page, but Abigail's got it, and they're on a rocky patch now, because second movie, and that's what you do in the second movie, right? That's what they did in Ghostbusters 2. That always works out really well. I didn't mind it, though. I thought it works out, and by the end of the movie, they're, happy together again and everything, and I mean, it did kind of, and not that it brushed in the first movie, and I thought it was all well paced there, but it's perfectly natural for bumpy relationship stuff, especially when you like just met or whatever. You're figuring out each other and whatnot. So, but I noticed Nick Cage definitely goes like full Cage a little bit more here in the movie, like the scene in Buckingham Palace where he's like got to make a scene, and a couple other spots in the movie where he just kind of does his patented overacting, kind of thing. So it makes the movie a little bit more fun, but maybe a little bit less believable and grounded in a couple of senses, and that's fine. I mean, for a sequel, it's a good sequel, and I like it, and I think it's definitely a good follow-up to the original. But, I just prefer the original. That doesn't mean that it's not worthy of being in the same ranks as the original, because I do definitely classify them together, It's probably not, like I said, as good as the original, but I do still really like it. It's more National Treasure, which is great, and is what I want, is more National Treasure. We just didn't get enough of that, And the City of Gold, that's cool and everything. Again, it's kind of the Temple of Doom problem, where we're looking for something that's not as cool as finding, like, this national treasure that's, like, I know the City of Gold is cool, but it's like, man, when you see that scene at the end of the first one, it's like, whoa, look at that shit! Like, that's insane. Like, the sequel and stuff, that's cool and everything. And, it's a little more drawn out here and there, in terms of pacing, and more chase scenes and more action-y stuff. And they had that in the original, but it was always kind of strung along by the clues and stuff. And it is in this one, too. But, I don't know, it just feels a little different. It's sequel-y. But there's still a lot of great tension and a lot of great scenes, where they're puzzle solving and treasure hunting and whatnot. And in a lot of ways, this movie has a lot of that versus the original, which has a good amount of that, but, it's kind of so fast-paced that you're not always, like, getting that as much. I don't know. This movie has a lot of action scenes, though. I just will say that. And, I don't feel like they really draw on that long, but, a couple of them go on a little long. Like, some of the Cibola stuff kind of drags at the end of the movie there, I feel like. It's a lot of action-y bits, not a lot of, like, figuring stuff out. There is later, when they're trying to figure out, like, the whole... I mean, they're always trying to figure out stuff down there, but it's just like, I don't know. I felt like the, I don't mind it, is all I'm trying to say. It's a good enough thing, the ending parts there later on. Anyway, before we get there, let's talk about all the other stuff that's happening. So, he tries to go and steal her key card from the house. Riley and him go to do this. Riley's car gets impounded, by the way, because of taxes or some shit. and he gets it back at the end of the movie. That's kind of his little ending there at the very end. But he wrote a book on the whole Templar treasure thing, and nobody knows who he is, and he doesn't get as much credit for that, you know. And so he's feeling kind of down about that, you know. So I thought it was also a little bullshit how I know it was a joke in the first one, but he's like, next time we find a treasure that redefines all mankind. He said that at the end. He's like, you get the call on the finder's fees. And then, like, they make a joke about it later on where he's like, he's telling Mitch that he can have all the treasure, and Riley's like, what? You know, like, well deserved, too. You promised him the treasure next time. That's this time. I mean, it's gonna unlock the Olmec language and whatnot. Isn't that what Emily said? You know, like, I mean, I'm Emily, too, but Emily's his mom in the movie, so I thought that was kind of funny. So, yeah, anyway, she had some, Abigail at some point, just is kind of like, she's got a new boyfriend too, Connor, who comes in a couple times, like later on and whatnot, but, she goes and takes him to, like, look at the page. They find this code on the page, which was the code from the beginning of the movie. And he's trying to figure out what's the word or the clue that would lead him to, what the fuck is happening? Why is that doing that? That would lead him to figure out the word, because he doesn't have the debt that all men pay, which is what he needs to know. Then his dad tells him that later on, and he's like, oh, it's death. And then, so they get La Boule, and La Boule is the guy who made the Statue of Liberty there. All three Statue of Liberties, by the way. There's 3 of them. The only question is, which Statue of Liberty? Exactly, which one? There's more than one? There are 3, actually, Riley. That's one of those classic lines from the trailer there. You know, you learn things about history through National Treasure 2 there, which is nice. So they figure out they have to go to Paris to look at the Statue of Liberty, and he's like got a little helicopter thing. You know, now it would be like a drone or something, but it's essentially that. You know, it's like got a camera on it, and he like finds it on the torch there. This thing that says these desks or these twins stand resolute. Blah 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 blah. Anyways, it's referring to the resolute desks, which is the desk that's at Buckingham Palace, which is why they go there, and then also the president's desk in the White House there. So they arrange to go to Buckingham Palace. He goes in there. I thought they had like a thing with the curator. They keep saying they have this meeting, and then they just disregard that, I guess, to go faster because Mitch or something, Wilkinson, you know, I don't know. Anyway, he forces his way in there. This is when he has his big scene with Abigail, where they argue, but they're like fake arguing, but then they're real arguing within the fake argument. And they make a whole line about that. And there's a lot of funny lines. There's a lot more humor, I feel like, in this movie, in terms of like them and their relationship, and then like Nick Cage causing scenes and whatnot. And you know, that's fine. Lighthearted is good. But it's all relevant to the plot and to the characters and stuff, and so I appreciate that, you know, and to their relationship. So anyway, they get up to this this room, and they're like looking at it, and they find out it's like a puzzle box, this desk. So they have to like pull out the drawers in a proper fashion. And so 1876, I believe it was, is the date on the statue there. So they try that second. They try her birthday first, the Queen at the time, Queen Victoria. But then they try the date on the statue, and it opens up, and they find this plank, which is like an Olmec or whatever. So they can't read that. But they take it, and then Mitch sees that they have it. So there's like this whole car chase in Buckingham, or like London there, around Buckingham Palace. And eventually he runs a red light so that he can get a picture of it on the police the traffic cam or whatever, and he's like, you know, hack into the database and see if it can get that picture. And Riley's like, oh, okay. And he's like, what, you can't do it? He's like, yeah, I just don't like people to assume I can do it. It's like, what the fuck? He could do that? Just like remotely even? I mean, that's pretty impressive. Like, I mean, you know, like Shania Twain wouldn't be impressed by that, but I'm impressed by that, you know. I'm pretty impressed. I think that's a cool skill if you could actually do that. It's a little unbelievable though. I don't know that he could do that from there, but anyway. That's what we need to move the plot forward. So then he like tosses the plank out the window into the water. Mitch gets his hands on it. They've got like their phones. They cloned his dad's phone or whatever, so that whenever like he gets a call or a text or something, it also goes to this clone phone that Mitch has. So he is constantly getting updates about the situation. Anyway, they take it to Nick Cage, to Ben Gates' mom, Emily, who's a professor, and Patrick and her aren't on great terms at the beginning of the movie there, for most of the movie anyway. They argue about all this stuff, like, oh, this happened and blah blah blah, you know, and apparently he was out on treasure hunts and he didn't want to be a responsible parent for Ben or something. So that was kind of the whole plot there with their characters. But anyway, so she like translates the first half of the plank there that they have, and she's like, but it's incomplete because, you know, you got half of glyphs here, so you need to get the other half. And so when they leave, he's like, yeah, I know where the other half is. It's in the president's desk. And they're like, our president? And he's like, yeah, our president. So they arranged with Connor for this like Easter roll thing, like this Easter event that's happening at the White House there, and he comes, you know, to go on a date with Abigail, but she's there with Gates, and they convince him to show. They convince him to show them the Oval Office. So they go in there and they're like looking around, and then Gates like distracts him by Abigail pretending that she lost an earring. So then they're like looking around for that, and she's doing all these like, you know, suggestive like movements and stuff to like get him to pay attention to her rather than Gates. So he's over there at the Resolute desk like, you know, doing all the puzzle-y stuff. But he realizes that the plank is gone, so he takes a picture of this seal that's in there. And then he gets out of there. He shows it to Riley, and Riley's like, it's in my book. You should have read my book, you know, or whatever. I'm a relevant character, you know, basically. And so he explains to him it's the seal of the president's... It's the president's secret seal. For his book of secrets or whatever. So Ben's trying to get this book of secrets, but, you know, it's the president's book of secrets. The only person who knows about it is the president. And he goes and asks the FBI guy, the head of the FBI there, Peter Sandusky, I believe is his name, about it. And he's like, you know, he's like, do you like ducks? And so they have to go outside to talk about it, because he's his friend outside, but inside he's the head of the FBI, you know, or whatever. So he tells him that there's a book, allegedly, and he's like, you know, only the president would know, and blah blah blah. And so Ben, of course, you know, mimicking the last movie, sort of, where he's like, I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence. He's like, I'm gonna kidnap the president. And everyone's like, what the fuck are you talking about, motherfucker? You can't kidnap the goddamn president. He's the fucking president. You can't get 3 minutes alone with him if you were married to him, kind of thing. So he sets it up that his birthday is at Mount Vernon, which I went to when I went to DC. On my DC trip, we went to Mount Vernon. So I thought that was kind of cool. But he has this floor plans for this lost tunnel. So that's his plan, is to get him into this lost tunnel and then ask him about the book. So that's basically what he does. And at first he's like, why the hell would you do this? Like, he's denying it and denying it. And then he finally tells him, like, there's a book. Here's where it's at. He's at the Library of Congress. Here's the numbers. Here's the location. Here's the codes you need to do to get through the door and all that. So they sneak in there. They find the location of the book. But it's not there. And then they're like, oh, man, what the fuck? And so they start pulling books from outside there. And then there's, like, a little lock thing behind there. He puts in the location. The location's a combination. Opens up. There's the Book of Secrets. They scroll past, like, Riley's like, oh, it's JFK. It's the Area 51. It's like, oh, we don't have time. We don't have time. It's like, oh, fuck you. I want to see what's on there. And the president asks him, hey, look at page 47, which is the fucking, for the next movie that never happened. So apparently it's life-altering, and it took, 20 years or whatever, 15 years, or... They make a joke about that in the show. It's like, yeah, it's so big it took, like, 15 years to figure it out, or some shit like that. I don't know. Just a little tease for National Treasure 3 there, which I want so desperately. But anyway, so yeah, but he's on the run, because, like, much like the first movie where he stole the Declaration of Independence, he kidnapped the president. But, Mitch figures out that the mom can translate, because he sends the picture. There's a picture in the book of the other half of the plank, which got destroyed. So he sends that to his dad to send to his mom there, or show to his mom. So the dad goes off there, but Mitch gets there first, and he's telling the mom, he's like, tell him the wrong thing, and I've got the only last clue to this whole thing, and he's like, got a letter about it, or something. So he's got this clue that they need. So he's like, basically he's keeping himself relevant, because he wants to be the one to discover the City of Gold. That's kind of the whole thing later on, is that's what he wanted. That was his whole motivation, was that. He didn't do it for glory, for value. I mean, he did it for glory, really. He didn't do it for value. He didn't want to get rich for anything. He just wanted to be remembered in history as the guy who found the City of Gold, basically. So, they all kind of go there together, and they figure out it's at Mount Rushmore, which is a cover-up, I guess, for Cibola, which is a cool kind of little thing there, because it's always in these historical locations, or like historical documents and all this stuff, it's always the hardest place to be. So they go there, and Mitch finally tells them about the clues, and they find this latch that, like, lets them into the place, and they do all these, like, crazy puzzle things, they balance on this one board, and all this other crazy stuff. And they finally find the City of Gold down there, but it's, like, flooding because of this, like, water that keeps coming into it, and so they have to find a way out of there, basically. But yeah, so I mean, they find this tunnel out of there, but then they realize one person kind of has to stay behind to open the door, so that the current on, because, like, when you have the thing open, the water keeps flowing through the tunnel that leads outside, so that's not good, because it'll flood or something. How does that make sense? It would just go out the thing. I don't know. Anyway, you're not supposed to have the door open. You gotta get out. But you need a person to hold the spinny thing to get the door open. So at first he wants it to be Gates, so they're doing it together, and he's gonna go through. But then he gets stuck there, and he sacrifices himself, and, a really big moment, because to this point he's been real aggressive and hasn't really been accommodating, but then he basically says to Gates, like, hey, get out of here. Just tell him I found it, It's not fair that history would not remember me. So he tells the president later on that, like, they all found it, plus Mitch Wilkinson. And, so, yeah, great. So he held his promise. And then he's like, did you look at the thing on page 47? He's like, that's life-altering, sir. I think I can help with that. And they're like, great. And he's like, what are you talking about? Page 47 of what? Oh, the book? He's like, what book? It's like, fuck you. You know what book, you motherfucker. So, that's the movie. Really, it's a great sequel to National Treasure. The music is still great. I mean, it's still very good. I mean, and I felt like the first one had like a really, really memorable soundtrack. This is more of the same kind of music. And there's a lot more of it, so it's like, I know in the first one there was like 12 tracks or whatever, and it's like, yeah, I remember all of them because I used to listen to it constantly. This was like, you know, but by this time it was like 2008, it was, or 2007, sorry. It was a couple years later, so, National Treasure was a big deal, and the sequel to that was a big deal, and, I mean, I liked it, and I thought it was great, and I thought it was a great follow-up to the original. I was always just kind of hoping for a third movie, which never came, you know. So, yeah, but I think everything kind of holds up. It's about the same length. It's a little bit shorter, but I feel like the pacing could have been, like, maybe slightly better. Not that it's bad or anything. It's just, like, I don't know, a couple of the action scenes go on for a little bit. You know how I feel about that, so I'm a little bit picky. I'm not picky, but it's like, you know, it's like, if I'm gonna nitpick about anything, I think it's that, you know, it's just like, and maybe it was like a less relevant Treasure to me, that whole thing again, you know, like, it's a different culture of Treasure, but it's still a good one. It's just like, something, like, I know what the Declaration of Independence is and all of that kind of stuff, but, this one taught me about a new treasure, which is even great in its own way, you know, but it's the Temple of Doom situation, you know, where it's like, it's still a cool treasure, but it's like, it's not the Lost Ark or the Holy Grail, it's like everyone knows, you know, but, still really cool, and everything kind of works out in the end, and they I guess, unflood it and have that discovery of that, and they're figuring out everything in there and cataloging it and whatever, and so that's nice, you know, it's a nice ending there. And he doesn't go to jail, and he actually gets his grandpa, like, memorialized in the paper there as, like, a war hero, so good ending overall, you know? So yeah, I think it's more of the great things about National Treasure. They cage it up a little bit more, which is fun and good in its own way. It's more humorous in a lot of places, which is fine. You know, I like that. But it still has the serious treasure hunting aspects, and there's still a lot of tense stuff going on in this movie. So I think it really does work well as a sequel to National Treasure. And it would have worked well as a middle piece in a trilogy, you know, so, at some point we'll talk about the show. This one I'm gonna give, like, a 9.7, I'm gonna say, out of 10. Very, very slightly less than the original, you know, because the original is just really classic. This one is still great, and it's still a very great follow-up, overall, to the original, in my opinion. Apparently a lot of people, like, didn't like this one as much, which I can maybe understand, but I don't. I think they're both synonymously, like, they're linked, you know? I gotta watch one and then the other. It's they fit together so well. I like it. It's a good expansion of National Treasure. It does what a sequel should do. And improves on things, and, you know, I mean, maybe doesn't improve on other things, but it's really not to an extent that, that makes it bad or anything. It's still a great movie, so, yeah, 9.7 out of 10. So, until next time, this has been Emily saying, stick around, subscribe, join the Bad Girl Coven, And I'll see you guys in the next one. Never forget, magic comes from the heart. And yeah, so Emily,